The opinions and statements made on the Josh Bernstein Show are solely those of the host and do not reflect those of any of the show's advertisers or sponsors.
President Trump could cure cancer tomorrow and rescue kittens from a burning building, and they'd still call him a piece of I don't want to drain the swamp. What I want to do is I want to drown these swamp monsters in their own swamp water.
And now, America's favorite bald badass, Josh Bernstein.
Welcome back to the program. This is going to be one of my most important shows that I have ever done, okay? We're not going to really talk about politics so much in this one. We're not going to talk about different stories that are happening in the news, although, of course, we know what happened today, which we'll very briefly touch on. But what we're going to talk about is data, and data that honestly is not very good. And this data is some data that I have thought about doing for a while now. And I think what happened today was the catalyst to say, finally, do this type of show. And that is what we are going to do right now. So we all know what happened today. President Trump was indicted on more of these BS charges. And again, as I said earlier today on Jeff Carrera's show on WGSO 990 that I've been doing for the past 7 years, every Thursday morning at 8 a.m., that it was, again, another part of this witch hunt. But more importantly, they charged Trump with the exact code that they refused to charge Kankles McPantsuit, Hillary Clinton, with. And that is U.S. Code 18793, destruction or removal of classified documents. Trump, as I've said before, and I don't need to keep repeating myself, he could literally wipe his behind and take the toilet paper out of the White House, and by his act alone, it is declassified. So Jack Off Smith has no case. Story for another day. But it's not about the fact that President Trump was indicted once again on these garbage charges. What I want to talk about is, how did we get there? How did we get to the point now where we no longer have a judicial system that works for the people? And that is what we're going to discuss today. So the first thing I'm going to say is this. Home of the brave, land of the free, garbage. Not anymore, folks. Hasn't been since at least the 1970s, 1980s. But you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to take what I'm telling you as fact. I will do what I always do. I will show you. I will give you the data to prove it. Okay? So let's look at this image here first and foremost. And all these images today are going to be full screen. In 1975, according to the World Economic Index, the United States was ranked in the top 10 most freest countries in the entire world. As a matter of fact, they were ranked number 10. You now see in the next column, in 1980, 5 years later, they were ranked number 9. Those were, of course, the start of the Reagan years and so on and so forth. Through those Reagan years, by 1985, they got all the way down to number 6. And by 1990, after Reagan and his Reagan Revolution changed America for the better, America was ranked in the top 5. As a matter of fact, in 1990, it was ranked number 5. And in 1995, it was ranked number 4, most freest countries in the world. Now, how did that happen? Well, it happened because of limited government. It happened because of cutting spending. It happened because of lowering taxes. And it happened because we had, for the most part, a very robust freedom of the press. We were allowed to say what we wanted to say. We were allowed to be Americans and not be censored and not have all of these horrible things from the government dictated to us and happening to us, right? We'll take a look at this one, okay? By 2002, only 7 years later, after 9/11, of course, and then the ill-advised, ill-named Patriot Act, the Unpatriot Act, which allowed the spying on American citizens, and of course the creation of the fourth largest entity of the United States government, the Department of Homeland Security. Well, America dropped all the way down to number 23. No longer in the top 10. Okay? Now, in this image here, in only 21 years, under the weaponization of the intel community, the rise of big tech censorship, the pandemic, the infiltration of the CCP into our government and our media, the corrupt and lawless FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, NSA, and of course, not just the 2020 stolen election, but even the midterms of 2022, America now ranks a pathetic 39th most freest country. As a matter of fact, I couldn't fit America on the first page. I had to do a second page because they weren't even on the first page anymore. They're in the right-hand column on the second side. Okay? Now, let's talk about some more stuff here. And I'm going to break down some of the information that you are seeing here. Because, yes, what does the 39th ranked country out of like 170 countries really mean? Well, quite a bit, to be quite honest. And every American should be not only ashamed of themselves for not fighting back harder, but more importantly, you should be outraged that you are no longer the home of the brave and the land of the free. Clearly, that is a mirage and a myth, unfortunately. Now, let's go back to this image. Now, what is most troubling in this image, and there's a lot that's troubling in this image, is the index on economic freedom. We are no longer ranked as a, quote, free economic system or a free economic country. And instead, we are now ranked mostly free. And I will say this, that's probably a gift too. And why do I say that? Well, I guess when your country is $32 trillion in debt, when you add in unfunded liabilities, you're talking about $108 to $109 trillion in unpaid liabilities in debt. And then they just raised the debt ceiling, I don't know, for the 79th time in a row without ever having a plan to ever pay it down. It might actually be a gift rating to be, quote, mostly free. Here's something I personally am very, very aware of, and that is press freedom, or shall we say, lack thereof. Okay? America's First Amendment rights to freedom of speech have been under assault ever since the turn of the century. And of course, with that was the rise of big tech and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and so on and so forth. And so it's no wonder that we no longer have a, quote, good rating, and instead it's just satisfactory. Well, I don't even think it is satisfactory, folks. I personally think it is nowhere near satisfactory. It is definitely problematic, and it's getting worse each and every day. And of course, last but certainly not least, what is the state of our so-called constitutional republic? I don't like using the word democracy. You know the reasons why. In a democracy, you do not have individual rights. It is mob rule. That is why they say democracy rather than constitutional republic. But if you are looking at the terms that they are using in this index, the term full democracy would be the equivalent, I guess you could say, to a constitutional republic. But I think that definition is flawed, just like our rating, a flawed democracy. So, there it is, folks, in a nutshell. Are we really that free? I don't think so. And clearly this data proves it. Now, what's it going to take to get America back into the top 5? Well, I don't know 100% the answer to that. But I know it's not President Trump. Not saying that I don't want him to be the nominee and want him to win and run and win and get this country back on track. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying as one person, President Trump alone is not going to be just the answer. And quite frankly, with the indictment today on these BS charges that they put out on him once again, plus New York, you got Georgia, you got all these others. There's another 6 or 7 more coming down the pike. I think it'll be a miracle if they even allow him to run. But if somehow he does miraculously run for president in 2024, and even more miraculously, they somehow allow him to win, well, then perhaps, and again, this is a small perhaps, we might be able to save this country and get ourselves back on track. But I will say this, and you're not going to want to hear it. In the next few years, every single American that believes in freedom, liberty, and prosperity and doesn't want to live in tyranny and authoritarianism and totalitarianism and communism and socialism and all the other isms, guess what? You're going to have to make some sacrifices, okay? Whether that be personal or those sacrifices forced on you by a tyrannical government. But you will have to make sacrifices. You will also have to do some very in-depth and deep soul searching as well. And, you may have to come to a conclusion at some point as an American citizen, as a patriot, and as someone who has lived in and loved your freedom. You will have to make a decision. And that decision in the next few years, well, could be possibly whether or not there is indeed still a political solution to America's problems. And, well, we'll have to see what happens in the future. But that ultimate sacrifice could be a lot of different things, including, yes, your life. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.